the image that is sold about us even it depresses the next generation because they feel that they have a wrong brand to start with. But I know that as a nation, if we understand that 42% or so of our people will be within the age under 35, between the ages of 14 to 35, then we understand that every adult in this room, your future is insecure if we do not sort out the future of the next generation. Because when you can no longer work, when you can no longer deliver value, the way countries work, at a certain age, you go into the productive sector. You create the value for the development of the country. You create the value for the country to continue to work. There's a stage, my father is 86. Well, he worked very hard and trained all his children well. But now he's 86. How much can he do? Who is going to take care of him? The ones he used to take care of. How will he get taken care of? Depending on how he took care of us when he needed to take care of us. And because he invested in his children, he can rest and he can sleep now. He's not afraid. He will always have a roof over his house. His doctor's bills will always be paid. He would always have the help and the care that he needs. I know that when Tunde Fashola's dad, in his last days, and as he struggled with his medical challenges, they didn't have to fret and worry. Why? He had raised children. He had invested in those children. And at the time that he needed those children to take care of him, they did. Nations work the same way. If we leave such a huge, literally half of our population, without equipping, empowering them in an objective, sustainable manner, those who are in power, in position, in wealth, in whatever opportunity we think we have now, there are seasons for everything. When the season changes and on our own, we're no longer really able, no matter how much you have. Because people that were wealthy 3 years ago, based on devaluation, your wealth has reduced by so much. Which means that if we do not build the right generation to run the country in the next season, they will destroy the country because they have no skills to. They cannot build businesses because they have not been well educated, equipped with the right entrepreneurial knowledge. They have not been given the right environment and opportunity to build an ecosystem that will make the country thrive. And if the country does not thrive, all of your hard-earned savings that you're keeping themselves can be at risk. Because if you had cash that was sitting in the bank at 197 to the dollar, and suddenly, officially, it becomes 300 and something to the dollar, calculate how much your wealth is worth. There's been all these narratives in the last few days about Nigeria having more poor people than India and all of those things. You need to go and read the report well, because actually it's being interpreted a bit wrongly. You need to get the facts. It's talking about the number of people going into poverty rather than absolute numbers of people that are in poverty. But the point is this. If the index is $1 something, and it was calculated at 197 to the dollar before, when you calculate it now at 300 and something, the numbers change. So even though your earning hasn't changed, the actual value changes. And therefore, if you cannot meet those numbers, we have problems. What are those things that we must do in order to make sure that the future works for all of us? We need to create the right environment, and it starts from our educational system. We need to harmonize our educational system with what the real sector requires. We need to look at the trends of now and the trends of the future and see what knowledge will be relevant in the marketplace of today. What knowledge are the employers of labor? What are they searching for? And then we must ask ourselves, the schools we run right now, the quality of teachers that we have, the education that we're offering, does it meet that need? Or are we just churning people out of institutions with certificates, but that employers of labor find unemployable because they lack the necessary skills. What must we do? Can we close the gaps? Yes, we can. Are there things that we can do? Yes, there are. There were a few things that I believe that Tunde Fashola tried when he was the governor of Lagos State. We had a lot of graduates in single honors degrees that were not relevant to anybody. And they had a policy of conversion. And I remember that there were people with single honors science degrees that were taken through teaching methodology courses for 10 weeks and then became qualified to be teachers. They themselves were sent into the senior secondary schools to help those students to prepare them for WAEC. And the performance of the students of the state in WAEC that was very poor before then improved dramatically because of those kind of interventions. That same principle, I remember, was applied to health because they then trained the community health officers under a volunteer scheme. And those people who had biological science single honors degrees were retrained and applied into community health centers to offer health education to people in those communities. We have many gaps within our ecosystem. There are many areas where we need real specific talent. We have the human beings. We have the school walls, but we need to review the knowledge that we're imparting between what we're teaching them and what we actually require. There's a lot of need for vocational studies. We're creating jobs. Every time under your ministry, sir, you give out a construction job, whether for roads or for housing, or for any of the other things within your ministry. There are a lot of jobs that are created. The question is, in many jobs that are created with Nigerian resources, how many of those jobs are actually taken by our people? Not because if our people were qualified and ready for the job, they wouldn't be taken, but there are many instances that our people's hands have not been prepared to take the jobs. And therefore, we prepare jobs, and the rest of West Africa come in and take the jobs. If I ask every one of you in this room today, if you've built a house, the houses you've built, your plumber, your tiler, your POP guy, the many people who worked on your property, you were using resources generated within the Nigerian economy, but the benefit of that investment did not benefit Nigerians because we do not have a coordinated policy. We need a 360-degree view. Every ministry, every arm of government that has a project that they're using Nigerian resources for needs to look at the job line, needs to find where the needs are, and we need to decide what the skills gaps are. We might not be able to gain it in the first or the second year, but it means that we then plan for a year or two to train our people with those particular skills. When we're signing bilateral agreements with countries, we need to include it in it. You cannot bring more than 2, 3, 4, 5 people. We do not allow countries to use us as an export port for their own labor. There are countries that have deliberate policy to export 30, 35% of their own people to other countries as labor because they know that they cannot provide work for everybody. Why do we, who have a dire situation with a lot of able-bodied young people, yes, they might not have the skills you need now, but we need to be deliberate. In every one of those bilateral agreements, there must be the part of it that requires that Nigerians are trained for the job. Even if the cost is increased by a measure for a period, the knowledge will be gained, and it will be gained for a lifetime. And the value they will create will add value to our economy. We cannot afford where we are. We cannot. Our future is what we're putting at risk. I don't care how much you think you're worth. I don't care what you think you have. Because guess what? If the young people of this country are not taken care of, if at the end of the day we do not ensure that the country is stable by ensuring that we create an equitable, fair environment for people to sustainably empower themselves, then we're all at risk. It's why no matter how beautiful your house is, you need to put